from Unique in the Creek. Today we are going to construct the basic rose using the large Unique in the Creek board. What you will need, and you will have everything if you had purchased a kit, you have a 10-yard, 10-inch roll of Deco mesh. You also have green 10-inch by 10-yard Deco mesh. You have a 100 pack of 6.5-inch 18-pound zip ties. Okay, you get some clothespins. These are come in really handy when you need an extra set of hands. You have a wire snippers, and these are used to cut off the ends of your zip ties because we don't want to dull your good scissors. And you will also have a measuring tool in your kit. It is a piece of cardboard, and it can be disposed of after you're done your rows, or you can keep it for further projects. And the large Unique in the Creek board. Okay, in this large board, you will see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and those are referring to the rows on the board. So these are the circumferences: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and the only thing you will need of your own is a pair of scissors. Hopefully they're sharp. Sharp scissors do make it much easier to cut our Deco mesh. Okay, so where I'm going to start off at is with the green leaves. Now, normally when I construct my roses, I do the green leaves last. However, when I'm teaching, because I do it last, the whole board is full of the red mesh, so it's very hard to see what I'm doing. I do prefer to do the leaves at the end because they do stick out pretty far, and by the time you're finished constructing your rose, your leaves look a little bit tattered. So for your first rose, you can do the outside leaves first and construct the rose, or you can do it at the end, and I will show you at the end how to do it when your rose is finished. But I do want to show you the beginning so you can actually see what I'm doing with these outside holes, because we will be using row 1 for the green leaves. Okay, so I'm just going to set the board aside for a second, and what we're going to do is we're going to roll out this green mesh, and you're going to take your measuring tool and just lay it on top of the mesh. Now you want your mesh, when you roll it out, you do want it so it's curling upwards. Okay, so it kind of makes a U shaped. Curling downwards is where you take that natural curl and you're facing it down towards the table. Okay, for this one, we're going to have it curled up. What you're going to do is you're going to put your measuring tool, which is 10 inches, just on top of your mesh, just like that, and you're going to give it a flip. Okay, and here's where you want to take your measuring tool that's in there and kind of make it tight fitting, so you'll get as close to of a 10-inch piece as possible. Okay, and you're going to take your two clothespins and put one at the top, securing the two pieces together there, and one at the bottom. Okay, this will just keep it in place for you because we're going to do some flips. Now we need 8 pieces of green mesh for the outside row 1. So right now we have 1, 2. I'm going to flip it over again, making sure that this is still in the center and as tight as possible. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so that's giving us 8 pieces once we cut the sides. Now what you're going to do is, once you have it flipped over and you have 8 pieces, take that top clothespin off and clip it more near the center, and you're going to do the same with the bottom clothespin, kind of making sure all the seams are lined up, and do the same. Now once you got it clipped together, just like that, so if I moved it and everything, it would still stay all together, I'm going to cut it off the roll. And I just kind of put my clippers or something heavy to keep that roll from going over top. And I'm just going to clip or cut just straight down the middle off the roll. Now you will have quite a bit of green mesh left over from your kit, and you can use that for future projects. You can add more leaves if you want more green going around your rows. That is totally up to you. But for right now, for the basic rows, we are just going to use the 8 pieces of 10-inch. So once you have a package like this, what we're going to do is we're going to cut down this side of our mesh. And this is just a quick way to cut your mesh if you don't have a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. Okay, it's just a simple way to do this and to do it quickly. So you're going to take your scissors and you're going to start cutting up the seam. I just find giving it one snip and then grabbing that so you can kind of see where you're cutting, just down the seam, just like that. And make sure you don't cut your fingers off or anything. Okay, so you can take your measuring tool out now, and you just want to make sure that all the pieces have been cut. Now you're going to swing it around, and you're going to do the same thing. Press down, make a snip, and try and make sure you have all the bunches in there when you go to snip the sides, and go all the way up the edge. Just like that. And when you take your clothespins off, you will have 8 pieces of 10-inch mesh. So these pieces will be 10 by 10. And let's just double check we have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. So these are the green leaves that we're going to need. We are going to be cutting the red mesh exactly the same as we just did the green one. So by the time you're done your green, you're pretty much going to be a professional to start on the red. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, usually I do these at the end, but I do want to show you how to do the leaves where you can see what I'm doing without all the mesh on top. So you are going to take your zip tie. Now to work a zip tie, there's a head of a zip tie, and we call this the tail. The head has like a little concave or bicave angle to it. Okay, when we work the zip tie, we want the tail to go through the flat part of the zip tie. And what I mean by that is you're going to take the tail and go through the flat side, and when you pull, you're going to hear a zipping sound. And when you hear that zipping sound, when you tug on it, you're not going to be able to open these zip ties. If you try and do it backwards, which is very hard to do, so if you're having a lot of difficulty doing up your zip tie, just have a look down to make sure that you are indeed going through the flat part of the zip tie. So trying and do it backwards, it's really, really hard, especially when you have good zip ties, which the zip ties in your kit are very good zip ties. They come from an actual cable tie manufacturer, and they're UV resistant and all kinds of stuff. As you can see, I can't even do it. So if I flip it around and do it the correct way, it works like a charm. My rule of thumb is when I'm using my zip ties, if my flat part of my zip tie is always facing up towards the ceiling, it will always be the correct way every single time. So when you're first starting, just keep in mind and make it a practice to look to see when you put your zip tie in, if the zip tie flat part is facing the ceiling. So we're going to start on row 1, and these are where our leaves are going to go, our green leaves. And the green leaves frame the rows really, really nicely. However, you do not have to use green leaves all the way around. You may want to put 2 green leaves here and 2 green leaves here, and then leave these ones blank. It's totally up to you and what you want as a look. You can also put like 2 leaves in one hole and really fill up the greenery around it. So doing 2 pieces in each hole, again, totally up to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take my zip tie and I'm just going to place it down through this hole. And I'm going to leave it so it kind of makes an L shape. You can see that. But when I push down, my flat part of the zip tie is indeed facing the ceiling. So I know when I go to close this zip tie, it's going to close and I'm going to hear that zipping sound. So just set that aside. Now you're going to take a piece of your green mesh. Okay. This green mesh has a little bit of a metallic shine to it. So when the sun hits it, it's really, really pretty. To make the leaf for the outside row 1, you're going to take this mesh and you're going to take that curl and face it down. At the beginning I showed you curl up and curl down. We are using curl down. So this would be up because it's a U shape and it curls up on itself. And this will be down. Okay, we're using it down. Put it in a square in front of you, and then what you're going to do is just turn it into a diamond shape. Okay, just like that. And what we're going to do is we are going to scrunch with our forefinger and our thumb from this corner up to this corner. And you're going to do it like an accordion style. So you're going to scrunch, let go, scrunch, let go, scrunch. And you're kind of pressing with your thumb to keep those pleats in the center. Scrunch, 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 scrunch. Once you got the hang of that, it's pretty easy. You may have to try it a couple times to get the hang of it, and that's okay. Once you need to get the correct way so you don't get any bad habits. So when you do scrunch it, your piece will look like kind of like a bow, a pointed bow. Okay? You're going to place this back down on your table. You don't even have to lift it up. I just lifted it up to show you. And what you're going to do is you're going to flip these upwards, just like that. Okay? So they're at the side right now. You still have the center pinched. You are going to flip it upwards. And what I like to do is flip it upwards, and then I hold the center where it's curved, and I just pat down the sides just to ensure that both leaves are approximately the same size. And they look to be equal size here. If you're off by a little bit, it doesn't really matter. You won't be able to tell. Okay, now with this piece, I like to put it in between my fingers. So I have this wrapped piece above my pointer finger, and I have the actual leaves in the palm of my hand. What I'm going to do is now, with the curved side down, so you can see how this leaf is still trying to curl up, I'm going to face it down, and I'm going to put the middle of this on the board in between the hole and the outside of the board. Okay? Now I'm going to take my zip tie tail and bring the zip tie head and do this up. Just like that. Now you can then fix it and make sure your leaves are still the same size, and you're going to tighten it nice and tight. Okay? You don't want any of your green caught in the back side of your zip tie. We want to see all that full green leaf on the front. Okay, so now you're going to take your snippers. Now don't pull, if you pull too tight with these or close them too tight, they will cut your zip tie. I just kind of like to lightly put them in, and it helps me pull nice and tight. Once your zip tie is tight, you're going to cut off right at the base of the zip tie head. You're going to cut off the tail. And it's also good practice to have a little container near you to put your zip tie tails in, so cleanup at the end is a lot easier. So I have a scrap container that I use, and I'm just going to toss my zip tie tails in that. So I'm going to do one more leaf, and then we're going to move on to the red part. And like I said, you can come back and do the green, or if you wish, you can continue on with your green and have all the green on the outside. And then when you're finished your rose, you may have to trim some strings and stuff up. And once you do this more than once, you'll figure out a way that works for you. Okay, so this, like I said, is just for a beginner. And we're just going to keep it simple and straightforward. Okay, I got my zip tie in there. The flat part is facing the ceiling, so I know it's going to go in right. Again, I'm going to take a piece of that green mesh that I cut, curl side down on my table. Now, when you're doing methods like this with scrunching, you're going to want to work on a smooth surface. This is really, really hard to do if you have like a tablecloth or something underneath. If you have a tablecloth and you don't want to take the tablecloth off, grab a piece of cardboard or something, or even the frame, and put that underneath so you have a nice smooth surface that helps you glide as you're pinching your accordion center to make your petals. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Okay, from corner to corner. Pinch, 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 and I'm making like a fold, and like an accordion. All right, now I'm going to flip it up again and just put it in your, kind of squish it in your hand. And what I'm looking at is just to make sure these two tips are around the same size, and they are. So I'm going to take this, put this curve on the board again between the outside of the board and the hole. Take the tail, you don't want to let go of your mesh just yet, and zip it up tight. Well, not super tight, because you may want to check to make sure your leaves are still the same size, and they are. And once you are happy with it, I would pull it nice and tight. Again, not squeezing these because it will cut it, but just it helps pull it a little bit tight. If you have needle nose pliers, that works even better. So you can pull it really, really tight. Although this one was really, it was pretty tight, even though I used these. And then you're going to take your wire cutter right to the base and snip that tail off and discard it. Okay, that is how you do the leaves for row 1. I'm going to stop there with the leaves because I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing without the leaves in habit or getting all tattered and in the way. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is we are going to preload our board. Now, preloading your board means we're going to load with zip ties these sets of holes. Okay, let's preload row 2. We are going to start on the outside of the rows first. Again, for beginners, I generally show the outside first, because once we start building from the inside out, you will have a really, really hard time seeing what I am doing on row 2. Okay, so when I do basic roses, I do start on row 2, just so you can see what I'm doing. Once you've done a couple roses and you have the hang of row 2, you will probably start in the center where the bud is and start your rose and make it going outwards. Row 2 is the most difficult to do. So once you have the hang of row 2, you will want to start your roses from the center. It's just easier to build that way. But because this is basic, I'm going to start with row 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your zip tie. You're going to go down one hole and you're going to go up the other, making sure your flat part of the zip tie is facing the ceiling, and you're going to just give it a couple zips and make sure it's nice and tight. You want to give yourself working space between the board and the top of the zip tie. Okay, so you don't want to do it don't want it really, really tight, and you want to leave quite a bit of space just to work with. So we're going to go down and up again, and we are going to completely do this for all the holes on row 2. Okay, down and up. And this is where you're going to train yourself to make sure, and you don't have to touch it or anything, you can actually see that it's a flat part. And once you get proper ways to do it, then you don't pick up any bad habits. So paying attention of where your zip tie head is will save you a lot of time and headache, because many times I'll be wreathing and it's like, oh, is it going in? And then you actually have to take it out, flip it over, and by then you might have let go of your petal and everything. So it is really, really good practice just to start right off the bat paying attention to your zip tie. Okay, so you'd finished all of row 2. Okay, once you're finished row 2, I'm just going to put this aside and I'll finish it up in a bit. We're going to cut our red mesh. So what we're going to need for row 2, we need 16 pieces of 10-inch by 10 pieces of red, or whatever color rows you're doing. So I am using a poly fabric type mesh. It has no metallic in it, but I like this mesh because it gives a really nice deep color with only using 10-inch. If you've watched some of my tutorials previously, you will have heard that I do like making roses with 21-inch mesh. And the reason I use 21-inch mesh is to get that deep color saturation. But I find with this mesh, and you have this mesh in your kit, this mesh, you can use 10-inch and still get that really deep color saturation just because of the mesh it is. There are some Deco mesh out there that are quite thin, and you have to double up the petals. So this I took into account when I was making the kits of this mesh, and that you wouldn't have to do so much extra work by doubling the petals. Okay, so we are going to cut it the exact same way we did the green petals. So you're going to open your roll, your curl is going up, you're again going to take your 10-inch measuring tool, and that is the cardboard in your kit, and you're going to flip it over. Okay, we're going to take our clothespins again, line it all up, get the beginning startings of it all lined up. So it gives you, you want to get as close as possible to 10-inch pieces. I do realize when you flip it, you do lose a few inches or half inches. But with this rose, we need that. So we need the pieces as close to 10-inch as possible. Okay, so I'll do 8 pieces. We're gonna do 2 times 8 pieces. So I'm gonna do 8 flips, cut that down, and then I'll do it again. So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm still making sure it's tight here. 7, 8. Okay, I'm going to put something just to hold my mesh roll back. Keep it nice and tight still, and then you're going to take your clothespin off, line up the seams, and if you make sure that your seams are lined up, you won't have any wonky looking petals. Okay, now again we are going to cut this off the roll. I'm going to now move this just towards the middle, just to get it out of the way more. And I kind of push down, so that gives a little bit of lax right here where my measuring tool is, that I can get my scissors up it. So I start a cut. I kind of lift it to make sure I have all the layers, and then just continue up. My scissors are not the sharpest. I do need to get some new ones. But the sharper the scissors, the better the cut. And it's actually much easier when your scissors are sharp. So I'll lift it up a little bit, make sure I got it all through, and I do. Okay, take this off. So half will start to curl that way and half will start to curl this way, so you'll be able to tell which pieces are which. Cut that part off. Okay, let's just double check. We have 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good to go. So we're going to do that once again for another 8 pieces. So open this up. Put your measuring tool, flip it over, make it nice and tight, line up your seams, and put your clothespin just to hold it down. I find clothespins are so handy, especially if you're needing another extra set of hands. They're your new appendages. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, we're going to put something heavy again. Line everything up as best you can. Clothespin. Again, line everything up at the bottom. There we go. Clothespin. So we got our bundle here, and again we're going to cut this off the roll. So this is how we're going to end up cutting the whole roll, but we're going to cut it in stages so you don't have pieces of mesh scattered all over the place. Because once you start cutting a whole roll, you'll have like 36 pieces floating around everywhere, and then pieces will end up on the floor, and trust me, I know from experience. So I cut up this side, and now I'm going to cut up this side as well. Give it a cut, make sure all your pieces are in there, and then continue cutting up. There we go. So that is just a quick way, when you don't have a cutting mat and a rotary cutter, to cut your mesh for a wreath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wonderful. We have 16 pieces, and that's how many pieces we're going to be using. Okay, let's start this row 2. Again, like I said, row 2 is the more difficult one. But once you got the hang of it, it's not that hard. I had started one over here, so I only did half. So you can see my zip ties are preloaded here. Ignore these zip ties. I was just playing over there. So what we're going to do is load our petals in here. So you want to bring your board. Actually, I will start on this one just so you can see exactly, and the other one's not taking your focus off the petal. So you're going to take one of these pieces of red. Okay, for this petal, unlike the green petal we used fold down, for this petal we're going to use it as curl up. So you're going to have your curl up, you're going to turn it into a diamond shape. Okay, you're going to take the corner, top corner, and bring it down to meet the bottom corner. So you get this kind of triangular stingray type shape. Once I bring it down to the corner, I kind of flip it to the right, only because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to gather about an inch or two up the petal. So it gives you this kind of rain or umbrella type of shape, okay? For this particular flower, you do not have to worry about the frays because you will not see any of the strings coming down because the cut sides that we did won't be showing. So you'll find if you're doing more flowers with Unique in the Creek, some of them, the sides you will see, and it's a good plan to heat seal those, and that's a totally another tutorial. Okay, so what you're going to do, I'm going to recap that. You're putting it in a diamond, bringing the corner down to the bottom corner. I just swing it, scrunch, and if you have a cutting mat, you can even, that is actually 3 inches. So about anywhere from 2.5 to 3 inches. And you're going to keep it pinched there. So it doesn't matter where you start on row 2. You're going to take this tail, feed it through the zip tie, okay? And you're going to pull the zip tie nice and tight. I usually put about the whole 3 inches in to the zip tie. You can move it out. The farther you move it out, the more loosely your petals will look. So you can just guess, and it does not have to be any exact amount because you will not be able to tell if you went in 1/2 inch further on one petal than the other petal. I promise you will not be able to tell, but you just want to guesstimate about how much. So even if you take into account you're putting it just past the holes in front, that's a good way to judge of how much to put each of the tail in. Okay, you want to make sure this is nice and tight. Okay, pull it, and you're going to snip this off and discard it into your little bucket. Okay, easy enough. Now the second zip tie, and there's a pattern on row 2. The second petal is going to go in to the tail is going to go towards the outside of the board. So you notice this one, the tail is going towards the inside. This one, it's going to go towards the outside, and there is a reason for that, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So you're going to take your mesh, curl up, take that corner, bring it down to the other corner. You're going to swing it around and pinch to make a tail. Now this tail, like I said, is going to go out towards the outside of the board. Pull it tight so you see it going towards the outside. Pull it tight and snip off the zip tie tail. And we're going to continue this pattern all the way around. So corner, curl up, corner, corner, flip it around, take your tail, and this time we're going towards the center. Now, you may put the tails in wrong, which is okay. All you have to do is snip off that zip tie, put a new one in, and you can correct it really easy. I know it looks funny now, but there is a reason we do it like this. Now, as you can see, as I'm moving this around, these stick out pretty far, and that's why I do them last, because by the time we finish this wreath, I am probably going to do a lot of trimming on the those green leaves, so they look nice and they're not all tattered looking. Scrunch, and this one, so this one went inward, so this one's going to go towards the out of the board. And we're going to continue going around just like that. So I have started. And once you get the hang of this, you'll find you'll go much quicker. So it's practice. The more of these you make, the faster you are. And then you'll come up with your own probably little shortcuts. But you want to make sure you have the basic down pat first before you start any shortcuts of your own. Okay, so that went in. This one's going towards the out. And this is going to be building that flower kind of shape that is on the outside of the rose. And again, once you do these a few times and you know exactly how to do the outside row, you will probably want to do your outside row last as well. Because it is a little bit easier. Not easier, it's your product at the end result will look a little nicer, because once you start building on the inside of the rose, you'll find your arm will keep resting on the rose petals and kind of squishing them down. You can fluff them back up and everything, but that's just the reason I start from the inside and work my way out, so my arm is not squishing everything I've put in already. But again, there's always a fix. You fluff it up. You can cut off any strings that come out at the end. And even after you've done a few of these as well, you'll find preloading your whole board all at once saves a little bit more time as well. So I sit and actually, if I'm watching a movie or something, I'll sit and preload boards while I'm watching the movie, because it's such a simple task and you really don't have to think about it. And then you have a bunch of boards ready to go should you want to make any more flowers. And you would just have to have your mesh cut and just kind of whip all the petals in. I have gotten to the point where I can do a rose in about 20, from start to finish in about 20 minutes. So it definitely, practice makes perfect. Okay, so I finished preloading that row 2. And this last one, it went towards the inside. I'm going to make the next one going on the outside. So the petals for this rose are all the exact same petals except for the leaves. Okay, so outside. Going towards the inside. That one's going towards the outside. So now, as you can see, it's really hard to see what I have just done. So you can imagine when all the mesh on the inside rows are done, how really difficult it would be to see what I was doing on the outside row. But it is important to make sure your tails are going in, out, so you get that correct rose shape that we want for the outside. So you just start pushing them out of the way. Okay, so that one's going out. This one needs to go in. Okay, so this one is going out. Now the row 2 does take the longest time, obviously, because there is more sets of holes. There's 16 on row 2, and all the other rows have 8. So that's going out. And now this one's going in. More. So corner to corner. So by now, by the time you're almost done row 2, you are a professional petal maker. So look at this hot mess. And exactly why I was showing you row 2 first. Okay, last one. And it is going towards the outside. Okay, I'm just going to flip this over to make sure I didn't miss any. So there should be a zip tie in each set of holes, and I just kind of flick to make sure they're tight and they're good. And I didn't miss any, and they're all in there. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to take another zip tie, okay? And where your petal has the tail going inwards, you're going to put another zip tie here. You can do hot glue with this step, but see, I didn't put my zip tie in right, so I have to take it out and go around. This is the easiest and safest way to do this step without chances of burning your fingers. So what you're just going to put, I know there's a zip tie in there, we're going to put another one only on the ones that the tail are going inwards towards the center. So down and up, and give it a few little clicks, okay? You're going to do this for all the ones going inwards, and there's 8. And what we are going to do is kind of lock these outer corners in place. We've come up with several different ways to do this. Like I said, hot glue, or there's just different ways. I just find this way. You use a few more zip ties, but in your kit you have 100 zip ties, so you have plenty of room to make mistakes because you will only use about 50. So, and zip ties are like pennies. So, and once you get this part done, like this outer part, the rest of the rows is very easy to make. So you're going down and up, and when you go down, make sure the flat side is, facing towards the inside, or again, have a little flick it back. Is the flat side facing the ceiling? If so, then it's in there correct, and you'll have no problem zipping it up. All right, last one. So I just put 8 of those in. Okay, and it doesn't matter where you're going to start, so I'll just start on the zip tie that's in front of me. What I'm going to do, we're not using any of the petals that have the tail facing towards the outside, so you can kind of push those out of the way because we're not using them. So even if you want to clip them out of the way with your clothespin, so that just gives you a good view of the zip ties that we are going to be using right now. Okay, so what you're going to do is we're going to be tucking the tails or the edges of these petals into the zip ties, and what we're going to make is that scalloped look. Okay, and to do this, I'm just going to start anywheres. I'm going to use this zip tie. I'm going to take the corner of its neighbor to the right and put it in just like that. And then I'm going to take the corner of the neighbor to the left and put it in the zip tie just like that. So you want to make sure they're kind of flat. And then you're going to zip this up. Nice and tight. So pull it and cut. So that one is done. So, and I'm going to turn and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I am going to take the neighbor to the right, its corner, put it in its zip tie. Now you want to make sure it's kind of flat. And then I'm going to take the corner of the neighbor to the left and put it in, making sure that it's kind of flat when it goes in. So you want to have a nice scalloped edge. And zip it up. Okay, cut your tail off, turn. Now you might want to go under this way and come up to put it in. I just keep going over top of each one. So neighbor to the right, going in. Oh, now let's take this one off since we're working over here. And just clothespin them back so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so neighbor to the right is going in just about an inch in. That's about it. It's just tacking these corners down so they don't come out, and it gives it that, you can probably start to see we have that scalloped look. Did I forget one? Oh yeah, I'm on this one, sorry. So I want this one, and then the neighbor to the left. Pull it tight. Like I said, if you don't squeeze too hard with these, you can tighten it and then squeeze hard and it will clip it. Turn it. Neighbor to the left, to the right, just a little bit in, making sure it's in nice and it still has the nice shape. Pull it tight and cut off the zip tie. Okay, so take the neighbor to the right, putting it in. Now sometimes because the meshes, they like to stick to each other, so you just have to kind of pull. So neighbor to the right, neighbor to the left, and pull. Just keep that in mind when you're doing those outer edges. Cut. The next one, so let's move some of these. Take that off now, just move some of these inner petals out of the way so we can see what we're doing. Okay, neighbor to the right. It's going into this zip tie. Neighbor to the left is going into this zip tie and pull. So this is the reason why we go in, out, because these inner ones are now then going to hug around the rosebud as you're building it. And these 8 outer ones is giving it that scalloped rose shape. Okay, so again, neighbor to the right. So if you just keep that little neighbor to the right, neighbor to the left in your head, you'll have no problem. And we're almost done. We have one more left after this. You just want to make sure each corner is in there, like I said, about an inch. And pull tight. Cut it off. Okay, neighbor to, we're on our last one. Neighbor to the right. Making sure that it's in nicely. And the last one is neighbor to the left. And pull tight. There we go. We got that nice scalloped look. Now, because my arm was resting on it, some of them are gone flat. You can just pull them up to give them a little bit more volume. You don't want them flat. But that's the easiest and best way that you don't have to use hot glue and have the chance of burning yourself. Okay, so now we're going to take these off. Now we're going to get these. Just pick wherever, just grab a petal, and you're just going to kind of push these back. So those are the ones where the tail is facing towards the outside of the board. We want to kind of fluff them up and just push them back this way. Now, Deco mesh does have a mind of its own, but it can be trained. Sometimes you have to use a little bit of hot glue to train it. But do you see how I'm just kind of opening it up and pushing it towards the back, because we want to get it out of the way of our center here. And have it lay nicely. If we left it all curled up like that, you may, you know, even though it's a few minutes, it still may leave a crease. So we don't want any creases in our mesh. Deco mesh is finicky. Okay, so we got our outside done. There we go. So we have access to the inside of our board now. So what we're going to do is we are going to start on row 5. Okay, so we're going to start with the bud and then again work our way out. So you're going to preload closed row 5. So you're going to go down one hole and up the other. That little zip. Okay. 2. 3. And 4. Now at this point too, I would also suggest, now that we can see, because once we even start putting the bud in, it's going to be very, very hard to see the rest of the holes. I suggest right here that you preload the rest of the holes while you can see it. Like I said, when you are more experienced making your roses, you will preload the whole board before you even start. But for teaching this, I wanted to make sure you guys could see what I was doing and without the distractions of a whole bunch of zip ties that you can see. Now I'm just trimming these little corner pieces so I have access to the holes on row 4, because the tails are kind of going a little bit over top. Okay, so I'm going to preload the rest of these. So just get your, and you're going to go down and up and preload it all again. Just go around each circumference, because then when you flip your board over, you'll be able to see if you missed any zip ties or any holes. And I must say, the rose is one of the more complex flowers. So if you get through the rose, you will have no problem with pretty much any of our other flowers. And it's not that the rose is hard, it's the rose, the construction of it, you know, going, you know, the tail facing one way and facing the other way, is just a little bit more confusing than any of the other flowers. Okay, so I've done 5 and 4, so I just have row 3 left to preload. And just keep spinning it around. Now, with using this Deco mesh is weather resistant. The board is weather resistant. The zip ties are weather resistant. So you can put this right outside in the inclement weather. The only thing that would probably happen is the UV rays from the sun will fade it. And at the end of this tutorial, I will go over what you can use to prevent the fading of your mesh. Okay, so we're all preloaded. Let's flip it over, and we should have a zip tie in all the sets of holes, and it looks like we do, so we're good to go. I'm going to cut 4 pieces of mesh again, because that's what we're going to need on row 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that gave me 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's 4. So we're going to take this off. Put it in the center. And straight down. Cut this off the end of the roll, and we're going to go down the center of this crease here. So we got 4 pieces, and we're going to start the center of our bud. So that's row 5. So you're going to do your petal the same, curl up from corner to corner, and flip it to the side, get your tail, and you're going to put one tail, kind of like we did on the outside there. One tail is going to go towards the inside, so it doesn't matter which zip tie you pick. So one's towards the inside. The next one would be going towards the outside. Zip it in, cut your tail off, And then we got these two. So this one's going to go towards the inside. Now you could probably see why I got you to load all your zip ties. Because once we start the center and start building out the rows, it's very difficult to see what I am doing. And this is going towards the outside. Okay, once you get these 4 in, this is going to be the start of your rosebud. And everything is going to form around this center that you're going to build. So just pick a piece anywhere on your row 5. So we'll just pick on this one. So what you're going to do is there's the corner and there's the other corner. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of roll this corner in and around itself. Okay, do you see it kind of made a funnel just like that? So we'll do that again. So you're going to take a corner and just kind of roll it in just like this. Just like that. Now I like to take my clothespin and just clothespin so I can let go without this opening up again. Okay? Now you're going to take the one next to it. So I did this one. So it's this one right here. And you're going to take the corner, wrap it around that bud so it's like hugging the bud. And then you're going to take this corner and wrap it around. Okay, just like that. And I'm going to take my other clothespin. Then you're going to take the next one next to it and do exactly the same. You're going to open it, so your corners, and then you're going to wrap one corner around and wrap the other corner around. And your rose is constructed exactly like this from now on, except for the fact of the tails going in and out. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute. So you're going to take that and wrap it around and wrap that other piece around. And then this last piece, I'm going to take my clothespin and clip it where that corner finished. And it looks like it's staying upon itself like that. Okay, so as you can see, it's formed a rosebud. You guys can see that. It's very pretty. So it's just starting the very first one and rolling it in, and then just layering around, almost like hugging. The petals each are hugging each other as you go around. Now you have to keep going around to each neighbor as wrapping, and I'll get to that in a sec because we're going to cut another 8 pieces of our mesh because the next row is another 8. I used my last thing. Okay, so I only have the one clothespin, so I'm just going to flip it. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. I have another roll because this roll was I used for this. So I'll have to cut all these ones off in a second. So I got 5 here. Okay. Make sure these are all clipped in. Push it down. cut down one side and cut down the other. Okay, there we go. So now we are on row 4, and there's 8 on row 4. This mesh is really, really good for every hole. So you're going to take your corner and go down, swing it, make your tail. Now for the rest of these, the tails are always going towards the outside. You do not have to alternate inside, outside, inside, outside. So row 4 and 3 are always facing the outside, because what will happen as it's facing the outside, it just pretty much automatically wraps around the bud. Okay, so I'm gonna, it's a little bit more difficult now because we're getting more mesh in here, and then the mesh likes to stick to each other. But you're taking your tail, just slide it through and zip it up. Okay, and as you put it in, take your and wrap it around. Now as you start to put more and more mesh in, it will start building in on itself, that it'll automatically just start hugging, and you'll see it starting to get really full. Now I'm going to skip every other just so you can see how full it does get. Now you can only do that with really good mesh, and this is a really good quality full mesh. So I'm going to actually cut these off, because I'm only going to do every other on row 4. So there's one, I did one there. And I'm doing this just because there's sometimes when you are pulling the mesh to measure, if you don't pull it tight enough while you're measuring, you may run out of mesh. And I would rather you guys have enough mesh to do every other on row 3. And if you have extra mesh, you can go back in and put a few more petals in to make it a little fuller. But everybody does not measure the same. Unless you're using like a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, you won't be able to get every single piece the exact length. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's true. Because of the wrapping, you're losing a little bit, a few, you know, couple 0.5 of an inch or something, but those 0.5 inches start to add up. So, and you can see it's starting to get really full already, and even though we skipped those. And then we're going to totally do the rest of row 3 with full, all of them. You're not skipping any. So it's just row 4 that you can skip some. So skip there. All right, so there's 4 pieces on row 4. Okay, and you wrap it around. It's that whole hugging. They're hugging. Now they like to stick to each other, so that's why they it holds well once you start building, because they do like to stick to one another. Okay, we are on the next row, which is row 3, And we're going to fill all those in exactly like we did on row 4 with the tails going out. Okay, so you made your petal tail going towards the outside of the board. Still about 2 inches in with the tail, and zip it up. Now this, you really probably are not going to be able to see what I'm doing because now I'm really full on the board with mesh. But I am doing it exactly the way I did all the other ones. So continue wrapping. Now you're going to make sure you do the next one. Try not to skip one because you do need that wrapping for each neighbor, you know. I call them the neighbors. So tail towards the outside, zipping it tight. And you want to make sure if you have a little bit of extra tail, make sure it's pushed underneath anything that may be in the way, because you want that nice shape. Now you can see how full it's getting, and then we'll play around with that outside edge and we will be done. Oh, except for the green. So I like to go in, so hold the mesh, so my main part of the rose is kind of in my palm, and then I just go through the zip tie towards the outside with the tail and zip tight. You can actually then see kind of what you're doing when you do it like that. Again, if you don't have a really good quality mesh, you will not be able to skip holes in row 4. And if you don't measure correctly, because technically you need 36 petals for the rose. And if you're cutting them 10 inches, you technically should be able to get exactly 36 petals, because 10 yards is 360 inches. However, not all the rolls happen to be 10 yards. Sometimes they're shorted, you know, a little bit. And then taking into consideration the few inches or few lengths you lose while you're flipping your mesh, could cost you to have like not enough petals. So by using and putting good mesh in the kits that we sell is to our advantage and to yours. Okay, a couple more and then we are done. So again, that part, and I'm going through the zip tie. See if you guys can, I can even get that in there. So I'm going through just like that. Now we will have to cut some stuff. Now you can see as I'm building this, you can see I'm kind of pushing down on the outside. If I had not built that outside row, you wouldn't be pushing anything down. So again, once you start making a few of these, you will be able to do the outside row last, because you'll know how to do it. We have a couple more still. Okay, going in, digging for that zip tie. Pull tight. Now you can see I have the tail for that petal I just put in is on top of this petal. So it will inhibit this petal from going forward and being fluffy. So what I want to do is tuck this tail kind of down underneath the petal so I can bring this up forward and it's not going to stop it. Okay, and just keep hugging these petals going around. Okay, looks like we have 2 more to go. Pull it tight, clip the tail, tuck your tail underneath the other one so it's not, it allows you to hug these a lot nicer. And once we're completely done this, we're going to go around and, because some of the ends like to pop out and not stay in place. If you have hot glue on a hot glue gun, you can fix that really easy by just putting a little dab of hot glue and making it stay where it's supposed to. Because like I said, it has a mind of its own and it does what it wants, so you kind of have to train it. Now we have to dig down and there it is, find our last one. And it's a tight fit. There we go. And tuck that tail under. All right, our construction of the rose is complete. Now we're going to make it pretty. So see how this tail, some of them want to pop up. You just kind of have to tuck them in. And normally they'll stick to each other, like I said. So just go around and tuck in so they're not sticking out. And make sure that none of them are folded. So if the edge is folded in on itself. So I just go around and fluff, tuck, and it's a pretty good size rose. Without the leaves, it's about 20 inches in diameter. Okay, so all my outside ones are in. Now, if you have a glue gun and hot glue gun, and you do have some ones, or you want to make sure that if you're selling this, that the tails of these petals don't come out where they're not supposed to come out, you can put a dab of hot glue. So I'm really not liking this particular one right here. So I'm going to have to train it a bit. And to do that, so it's this one right here, I'm going to put a little bit of glue, hot glue, just a dab. Put it over top, and then you can take your clothespin and use it as a clamp. So you don't have to hold it with your finger to get a hot glue gun burn. But if you just take your time and go around and tuck all your stuff in, like I said, most of the times it just sticks to each other. There's a few of those pieces that just are not going to behave. Okay, I think, doesn't that look beautiful? Nice and full, very vibrant in color. This mesh is just fabulous. It's like a poly fabric mesh, it's called. It doesn't have like a shine like a metallic, but it is just super gorgeous for making a rose. It's like one of my favorites. Okay, so once your rose is constructed, you might want to continue more with the leaves. Okay, so you've seen how I did it front ways with the leaves when I first did the start of it. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to show you how you can do the rest of the leaves with it upside down. You may want to see these little pieces here. Those are the tails that we're facing towards the outside of the board. You may want to trim them, or you can just leave them because they're barely noticeable. But for the sake of teaching, I'm going to trim them so everything looks nice. Okay. So on the back of your board, you can see where we skipped these holes, and it worked perfect. And I'm glad we did skip it because the way I measured, A, might have not been correct, or B, there might have not have been a full 2 yards on that roll, or 10 yards on that roll. So if there was a full 10 yards and I had a couple more pieces, I could put a zip tie here and a zip tie here and add a couple more petals. But it is pretty full, and it really doesn't require it, but if you have the 2 petals or 3 petals left over, you might as well use them up. All right, so on the back of the board, we have our row 1, and this is where we're going to put the rest of these green petals. But you'll notice that there's 2 holes. On the front side of the board, these 2 holes are divoted in. In technical terms, it's called chamfered. These are your hanging holes. This is where you can make a hanger. You can use twine. You can use ribbon and make a nice ribbon hanger. Or if you're going to put it like directly outside, like at a cemetery or something, I just use a simple zip tie to make another hanger because it is weatherproof as well. So you're just going to go down the one hole and up the other, and you're going to make it here a couple zips, and you're just going to trim the tail off. And there you go, you've made yourself a hanger. Okay, simple hanger. Now let's finish the rest of these leaves, and then our project will be completed, and I will go over the spraying so you don't want it to fade. Okay, so we're going to take we had green pieces already cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to do the same thing I did at the beginning, but upside down. So I'm going to put my zip tie just like that, making sure the flat part of it is facing the ceiling. Taking my green mesh again. This time we are curl down towards the table. Turn it into a diamond. We're going to pinch from corner to corner, just like that. You're going to flip it. Measure to see if your leaves are about the same size. And we want, see how it's curling down? We want that curl down to face the door. And because we're doing it upside down, on the front part of it, we went in like this, where the curl was facing down. But because we're doing it on the back side, we're going to flip it so the curl is facing up. You're going to take your zip tie, and where you've curved it, slide it through, and you're going to zip this up. Okay, and now you want to make sure that there's no green on the back side, so you can just tuck that in, just like that. See if I can zoom down a bit, and pull it tight. Now, when I do it this way, I like to make sure that my zip tie heads are at the side of the board. And the reason for that is if you have the zip tie head at the back, there's potential of scratching the door. You don't want to scratch anybody's door. So I have the zip tie head here, and then I just kind of push it more towards the front like that. And that way there's nothing sharp. Okay, and there's your leaf, and it's curling. When we place it flat down, it will curl against the door. Okay, and that's the way we want it because we don't want to see the cut edge, and that's why we do the facing towards. So we're going to continue with the rest of row 1 with the leaves. And we are almost done. So zip tie in, scrunch, 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 flip, turn it over, curved part is going in, making sure none of the green is on the back side, and pull tight. Cut your zip tie, and I just push it to the front. The only reason I push it to the front is aesthetics, and also the fact that if somebody grabs the sides of it, if you don't get right at the head of the zip tie when you cut, it can be a little bit sharp. So we have 2 more here. And last one. Alrighty, we are done constructing our wreath. Congratulations on your first rose. Okay, so once you flip it over, you're going to go around again, and this is best done on the door. You'll be able to see where some of the petals are not behaving and sticking in. And you're going to take your glue gun, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do and staying where it's put, that you can just hit them up with just a dab of glue and just kind of hold it. Now, don't hold it where you just put the glue, put a little bit of glue and just kind of hold it over it. Or you can just use your clothespins and clamp it. Okay, and then for the center, if you have some extra mesh left over, you can take a piece of your mesh and make a little bud, which is what I did right here. And what you're going to do is just take a little piece of mesh, and it doesn't have to be 10 by 10, it can be just a very small piece, just like that. And you're just going to roll and cut. So what I'm doing is I'm just making this a center of the rose so the hole on the rose is not so big. So you're going to cut the end. Now I've already put a piece in here, and I'm going to put another piece since I still had a little piece. So I'm going to just plop some glue down in there, some hot glue. Trim this a little bit smaller and just stick this down in there. Still needs a little bit smaller. And this just fills in the center of the rose. Just hold it for a second. It's a little bit frayed. I actually don't need one, I don't think, but that's what you can do. I've already done one. I had this little tiny scrapped piece, and I just kind of rolled it, put some glue in there, and stuck it down in there. So normally it would be the circle here. So this is what we have done. Isn't it gorgeous. So congratulations. You'll have all your friends and family wanting you to make one for them. I'm just going to go over a little bit about the sprays. So even though this is all water resistant and stuff, it will fade over time, and you won't have that nice bright red color. So what you want to do is you want to spray. I got these both on Amazon, okay, and they're two different brands. There's SunGuard, and you can buy both of these, I believe, in hardware stores as well, but Amazon has them pretty cheaply priced, and you can get them the next day. This one is SunGuard. It's UV protectant for garden decor and more. So this is stuff you would spray on your outdoor furniture, outdoor patio cushions, and stuff like that. It's to prevent, it's almost a sunscreen for fabric, okay? You want to spray your wreath outside. Do not do it inside because it's a very aerosol and it doesn't smell the greatest. So make sure you do it in a well-ventilated area and just let it sit and dry for like 10-15 minutes, okay? The second brand is my preference. It's a made by Scotchgard, and Scotchgard, this one is water and sun shield with UV protectant, which means when the water hits the mesh, it's actually going to bead, like it's going to bead up, so the mesh won't soak in the water, and it's going to protect it from the UV rays as well. So this is a fairly newer product, so and it smells a little bit better than this one. So you still have to do it outside in a well-ventilated area, but your wreath smells a little bit better, you know, when you hang it on the front door. Okay guys, well congratulations on your first rose, and you can find more of our tutorials just like this on Unique in the Creek YouTube channel. And should you want to make another, you can either buy a kit where you bought this one, or you can go out on your own and purchase the boards from uniqueinthecreek.com, uniqueinthecreek.ca, amazon.com, decoexchange.com, and select Michael's stores. Okay, so you can purchase just the boards and try and do it on your own. If you have any problems, any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to contact us. You can contact us at uniqueinthecreek@hotmail.com, and somebody will get back to you to answer your questions. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you had fun, because not only do we want you to have fun, we want you to have fun and make pretty things. All right, guys, thanks again, and hopefully talk to you soon. Bye.